Welcome to the Golden Hour, the podcast community where moms and moms-to-be hear stories from other mothers and top experts in the pregnancy and postpartum care field. You can visit goldenhour.fm for more information, resources, and all other episodes. You can also find us at goldenhour.fm on Instagram for comments and questions. Welcome to today's episode of The Golden Hour. I'm your host, Dr. O, and today's guest is Sophia Yen, a powerhouse in women's health and reproductive justice. She's a clinical professor at Stanford in Adolescent Medicine and an MIT and UCSF alum, and holds a MPH from UC Berkeley focusing on maternal and child health. She's also the CEO and co-founder of Pandia Health, the only doctor-funded birth control delivery company, and a passionate advocate for empowering women through knowledge and access. Dr. Yen co-founded sheheroes.org, inspiring young women to see themselves in any career, and the Silver Rim campaign to trust women supporting reproductive rights. We will talk about everything from hashtag periods optional, her viral TEDx talk, and on why we don't have to bleed every month, to the latest in birth control, perimenopause, and how she's redefining what it means to lead with purpose and medicine. Welcome, Dr. Yen. Welcome, Sophia.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, man.
It's just great to have two women physicians of color
Thank
chatting
you.
about important health topics.
Yes, I 100% agree. As we chatted about in the pre-pod, as I call it, the pre-recording, we are connected through a mutual organization, TWA. We are allies, and I think there are many reasons that drew me to that group, but one of the things that I found most inspiring were fellow badass women, leading in their field and really kind of pushing the needle in terms of advocacy and questioning the status quo. And you are a prime example of it. And I think for me as a budding thought leader and future hopeful innovator in the women's health space, I think being able to be around role models like you and mentors like you is invaluable. So I'm grateful for that connection, and I'm even more grateful to have the next hour or so to pick your brain and learn about you and learn about the ways that you impact women's health in such powerful ways.
Thank you. I love that we're here, and let's do this.
Yes. So you've built this amazing career at this intersection of adolescent medicine and women's health and innovation. If you think back to an earlier stage in career, was there one defining moment or several moments that made you say, "Hey, I want to challenge the status quo. Like, I think things can be better than this." What was that moment for you, if you will?
I would say there's like three aha movements. The first one was I was a pre-med, high school. I had to do some service, public service. So
Yeah.
I volunteered at Planned Parenthood, and I was a pregnancy test results counselor. And I
Yeah.
ran the pregnancy test. So that was cool, the little chemical situation. But
Yeah.
urine,
Yeah.
not so cool. But anyway. And then one day I ran a pregnancy test for 13-year-olds. And
Mm.
it came back positive.
Yep.
And I was like, "Oof, this is gonna be hard."
Yeah. Heavy.
Yeah, I went in there, gave her options. You can continue the pregnancy, give it up for adoption, or
Mm.
terminate the pregnancy. And she's like, "I'm gonna continue it." And I was like, "Okay, let me hand you
Yeah.
over to the social worker to get you some support for that." But
Yeah.
realizing I was 15, she was 13, and our paths were gonna be so different, right?
Mm.
She would go on to have a difficult time to graduate high school, college,
Mm.
future education. She would have to have this child of hers starting at age 13 with her throughout all of this to deal with, to take care of, to nurture. I would go on to MIT, UCSF, Children's Oakland, UCSF, MPH, professor at Stanford, and CEO. A lot harder to do when you have an unplanned pregnancy. And if we as
Yeah.
society had only provided her comprehensive sex ed, we did provide her confidential access to reproductive health,
Mhm.
but also a role model to be like, I want to be this. And if I'm going to have sex, no way can I risk pregnancy. And as I like to
Mhm.
say, because I'm adolescent medicine, you can have sex. Just
Yeah.
don't get pregnant if you don't want to. And don't catch
Mhm.
any diseases because who wants disease, right?
Mhm.
So we have such good birth control out there. And if you just use one of the hormonal methods plus condoms or the copper IUD plus condoms, that's some pretty good protection. And then add
Yeah.
on emergency contraception if the condom pops or, God forbid, sexual assault,
Yeah.
then you could prevent a lot of things. And so that is why I went into medicine, because I love science and I love people and I want to help. I think a lot of us did it for that.
Uh-huh.
And I was looking at medical school and I was looking at OB-GYN, but then I hit adolescent medicine and I was like,
Yeah.
yay, I don't have to deliver babies and I suck at anatomy and I don't do surgery. So that's good too. But I could do outpatient gynecology where I can do the pap smear, I can do some
Yeah.
STIs, I can do counseling on birth control, I can prevent. And in pediatrics, we're all about advocacy and prevention. So that
Yeah.
just kind of went with everything I loved. And then the second part came when I was giving a talk to a bunch of physicians. Why don't women
Mm.
take their birth control? And one of the
Mm.
top reasons was didn't have it in their hand, didn't have time to go to the
Yeah.
pharmacy every single month. If you think about it, from age
Yeah.
15 to 2,
Yeah.
hashtag better things to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
My friend and I looked at each other as like, we can solve this. We will just make the coolest online pharmacy. Back in the day, it was just boring and deeply painful. And we're like,
Yeah.
let's put it on the phone. Let's make it proactive. Let's make it pro
Yeah.
women. Currently, they're still targeting the 70, 80-year-old with 3 drugs, 5 drugs, 3 times a day. We just want to do birth control and we want to do it well and make sure
Yeah.
no one runs out. And then we ran ads, free birth control delivery. And 60% of the people that responded did not have a prescription. And as a doctor, I'm like, I can write the prescription. Fine, I will write your prescription. We never meant to do telemedicine, but that's what was necessary because I didn't want to run ads where 60% of my ads were useless. And
Mm.
we had this opportunity to do asynchronous telemedicine, and COVID
Yeah.
really helped, educate people. And then
Yeah.
lastly, I hit menopause. And all my friends are like, menopause. And I'm like, yes, I will find the best treatment for me and I will share it with all of you.
Yeah.
And in building our 100% physician team, we picked up 2 OB-GYNs with 20 years experience each doing menopause.
Amazing.
And I was like, you are developing our protocol, you are training all of us. And if we have any questions, our doctors that have been trained by you following your protocol can consult you for any kind of questions they have about menopause. And so those are the 3 kind of points that, brought me to where I am today.
Yeah. I love anyone's origin story, right? It's so inspiring and so telling what like the passion that brought you into medicine, that one patient, right? That even though at the time you weren't a clinician, but you will forever remember that 13-year-old and it's informs, an amazing company that you've since created. But also one of the things I love about medicine for me as an OBGYN, but obviously for you, even though you're a specialist in adult medicine, is that continuum of care, right? In one story you've shared with me in terms of like your passions and why you do what you do, you talk about the one end of a spectrum for me, which is like contraception, right? Which because it tends to be that first early conversation that a teen might have with like either a primary care provider or pediatrician or an OB. And then that the end of that spectrum, which is perimenopause and menopausal health, which are very big hot topics. I think one of my pure privileges as an OBGYN is the fact that in one day, I literally have all those conversations. I always tell people that I joke because I'm not actually truly diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, but like, I'm pretty sure I have it because I love the fact that like every office visit's going to be different. And one day I might have a couple consults, but that same day I'm also doing a C-section and I might throw in like an office hysteroscopy. Like that's amazing that that's a part of a skill set that you and I both are able to offer for patients because our lives are a continuum and it's so interesting and I'll backtrack to my questions now. We'll first focus on, contraception, and then we'll follow up with perimenopause and menopausal health. But it's so interesting because for so many women, they don't actually like know about the reproductive health system, and the reproductive biology until they either have a problem or they need something, right? So
Mhm.
oftentimes those contraception counseling appointments, as I'm sure it is for you, is teaching people about like how ovulation works and how the different birth control methods are effective, and how they work on the body system. But same idea, by the time patients get to perimenopause and menopause, it's like a whole new conversation about like what they look like hormonally and how their body is functioning hormonally at the end of the reproductive life cycle. And these are things that I feel really empowered that I have learned because of training. But for most people, this is something that like it feels like it's totally like a black box, if you will. And I think we can do better. I think, yes, again, I mean, make an appointment with Dr. Sophia Yen. You're gonna have the best appointment in your life. Make an appointment with me. I think I'm pretty darn good. But I
Mhm.
think that, rather than people being in fear or very confused by what's happening to the body as it's happening, or not necessarily having an understanding of like of what their options are for contraception and having an unplanned pregnancy, whatever it is, there's so many different ways that we can empower patients. So to my question, when I we think about sex ed in the US, what do you think is lacking? Right. Again, going back to that patient that you described, there's I still remember my sex ed course. I'm putting in quotes because I don't think it was really education, but it was oftentimes abstinence, right? Which is
Mm.
not sufficient. How do you think we can improve with sexual education in the US, and are we getting there?
The good news is that we've moved over time to abstinence plus as
Yeah.
opposed to abstinence only.
Mhm.
However, there is one party that continually pushes abstinence only. And the research shows that abstinence only doesn't work so well. That if you
Mhm.
push abstinence only or purity pledges, that when someone has sex, they're less likely to prevent sexually transmitted infections and unplanned pregnancies because they can't have a condom in their purse or wallet because they're not supposed to do that. That's not there. But as we have all gone through adolescence, we've been horny and we know what that's like. We know the situations that are there. And I want to present the statistics. It's
Mhm.
about 30%? No, I think it's actually, sorry, 10% of high school freshmen have had sex. This is your 13, 14-year-old. That's a very small number. 10%, 1 in 10. That's a lot.
Mhm.
In a classroom of 30, three of those kids, freshmen, have had sex. And
Yeah.
then it's 10% each year until senior year. So by like senior year, 60%, though recently the sex has been going down because our kids are stressed out or don't have time or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so roughly, 45 to 55% of high school seniors have had heterosexual relations at
Mhm.
risk for pregnancy. So if
Mhm.
you don't want to teach high school students about sex ed, you're putting your head in the ground, you're in denial. Like, let's give them the tools to prevent unplanned pregnancy. So, one,
Mhm.
we got to start the sex ed early. And a lot of
Mhm.
people will split the girls and the boys and have the little period talk,
Mhm.
but that is fifth or sixth grade. That is around, 10 years old is usually when people will get their periods. 8 years old, you'll start puberty with bodily changes on general. But then 2 hours later, 2 years later, is when you get the menstruation and the risk for pregnancy situation, though
Mhm.
some people develop earlier than others. And if it develops too early, please go see your doctor. So one, we need to have that talk, but then and at the same time you get your periods, you're at risk of pregnancy. And in
Mhm.
fact, you can get pregnant before your first period. So we
Mhm.
need the education of how to prevent unplanned pregnancy. But the next
Yeah.
nuance is relationship. Don't have
Yeah.
sex because you feel that is how you become a woman. That is how
Yeah.
you gain power. When you have sex, realize you risk decreasing your future opportunity for education, for
Mhm.
employment. I really hope that most people won't get pregnant and have a baby until they've gone off to college or at least have a job with insurance and a significant other because it's so much
Yeah.
easier to raise it with two than with
Yeah.
one, right? It's
Yeah.
so hard even with two. And my dad made fun of us. He's like, you even have your parents supporting you. So that's four. And if,
Yeah.
both sides, then you got six, But if it's just fun, then you don't have as much support. So I would
Mhm.
hope, to me as an adolescent medicine specialist, the job of a teenager is to go to school, figure out what you want to do, make
Yeah.
money, and then have babies. Don't have babies before you've got that set up. So
Yeah.
we need education earlier. What I love about Canada, I absolutely admire them. Their free healthcare system, but also their sex ed. It starts at kindergarten and it's
What?
every 2 years, and it's age appropriate, evidence based, science backed education. So,
Amazing.
what's appropriate at that age, at 5? It's okay to touch your genitalia, masturbate, but do that behind the door, not in
Yeah.
public. What is safe touch? Who should be
Yeah.
touching these parts? We as pediatricians teach that no one else should be touching your private parts other than your parents, and even then just to clean pee or poo, right?
Yeah.
So, that kind of education, but every
Yeah.
2 years. And then just as an aside, as a woman, a minority, I've noticed in my teen clinics, very few minorities use the tampon. And there is
Mm.
nothing in the book of Asian, Black, Latino that says no tampon. It's simply my mom didn't use tampons, my grandma didn't use
Yeah.
tampons, so what was I given when I started my periods?
Yeah.
Pads, and so never tried it, all sorts of stuff like that. And so I would like to see more minorities use tampons because my joke is we came to this country to be equal to the white people. So if they're 66, 80% using tampons, then we too should be 66,
Yes.
80% using tampons because once you use tampons, it's like night and day. It's so much better. But it
Yeah.
cultural blocks on that because of the definition of virginity, then that's a
Mm.
problem. And the point there is I always say, well, 2 points. 1, if your nose is like bleeding like crazy, would you be like, no, you cannot stick a nasal tampon up my nose because that would violate the sanctity of my nair? No, you wouldn't do
No.
that. And if your
Yeah.
person's bleeding out of her vagina, why can't I put in a tampon, in that situation?
Yeah.
Know that the hymen is not the end all be all, that it can rip on a bike or on a horse
Mhm.
or whatever, and God forbid sexual assault. I think virginity should be defined as voluntarily putting something
Mm.
there for pleasure. And that way, if you're sexually assaulted, you still have your virginity.
Oh,
And that this is also my second point on that is that the tampon stops the blood where it originates rather than letting it ooze onto the urethra, the anus, and all over the bed. That's my pet peeve, is the
yeah.
bed and the clothes and the
Yeah.
white skirt or, stuff like that.
Agreed, agreed. I mean, I've been dealing with my menstruation for many, many decades now, but hearing you makes me think all the way back. So that and it's so funny whenever I ask patients, like part of the history I take at the very first appointment is like, when was your first period? And it's oftentimes people don't just give me like, oh, I was 13. Oftentimes people are like, oh yeah, I was 13 because I remember I was XYZ. Like we all remember. And I remember I was at a sleepover and I was like, luckily it was like I woke up at the sleepover like the day I was supposed to go home. I was like, oh my God, this is happening. And like called my mom to pick me up like an hour earlier just so I can like run home. And I still remember her, like, because that's probably all, my parents are both Nigerian immigrants. And so I think that's like all she knew. And what they had available
Yeah.
in Nigeria was pads. And so when it was my time, she like handed me a pack of pads and that's what I knew. And when I first used a tampon was honestly because like one of my girlfriends who probably was white was like, oh, you're still using pads on it? You should try tampons. I was like, okay. And it's funny how like, those things can be, yeah, so much a part of like of your culture and your norm.
Mhm.
But even back to your piece about sex ed, is really thinking about examples elsewhere. Like when I'm hearing what they do in Canada, I'm like, okay, well, why can't we do that here? That makes
Mhm.
total sense. And thank goodness for amazing pediatricians like you, because I think pediatricians do, I think about a lot of the education I provide patients. By the time they see me, they're most of my patients tend to be much older, and we're talking about different
Mhm.
topics. But thank goodness for pediatricians because I think you guys are filling that gap of sexual education that should ideally be a part of school curriculums and
Yes.
aren't necessarily fully embedded. But I think part of what I hear from you too, it's not only education, but it's empowerment, and it's thinking about what virginity can look like, and making sure that that's something that is not only like pleasurable, but more importantly consensual. I think there's unfortunately we live in a time where you have to really educate youth about what that is too. And so again, grateful that for whatever gaps we have in education in the US, and of course it's gotten better from when you and I were both in school, but knowing that pediatricians and adolescent medicine specialists are filling those gaps because I think we still have a ways to go. If you had like a dream state, dream setup in terms of sexual education, is would it be what they do in Canada? Is that like, do you think that from all that you know, from talks you've probably gone to, conferences you've gone to, does that seem like the best way that's been done?
Yes, I think that Canada and the Europeans are executing it well. There's an example, we had a PhD student or PhD MD, and she came from, I think, the Netherlands, because the Netherlands always has good stuff over there.
Yeah.
And she wrote a book, Not Under My Roof. And so the test question is they went to Berkeley parents, which, as you know, are granola and liberal and
Yeah.
whatnot. And they're like, the young person came home with their significant other and said, could they spend the night? What would you say? And the Americans are like, not under my roof, right?
Yeah.
Even Berkeley. But in the Netherlands, they'd be like, okay, but with the assumption that we had met the person, that they had eaten
Mhm.
dinner, that me and my
Mhm.
young person had seen the doctor, gotten her birth
Mhm.
control, and then, yeah. But, like,
Yeah.
you think about it in the United States, not under my roof. If not there, then where? Oh, under the bleachers, at prom, in your
Mhm.
car, in the park. So many places that we could have been caught having sex that would have been really bad for my reputation, my partner's reputation, my family's reputation. But that's what you're pushing, and the risk of pregnancy.
Yep.
So let's give them sex ed starting kindergarten and normalizing it, and maybe every year, but at
Mhm.
least every other year, or at the very least, when the United States, people have it twice. And New York has, I think, at least 6 months or a month. California might be a month, might be a week, but like it's the liberal states whose parents are going to tell
Yeah.
you anyway, whose pediatricians are going to tell you anyway, is the
Yeah.
conservative states that need the education more because their
Yeah.
parents aren't comfortable teaching it or whatever. But if you ask parents, 80% of parents want comprehensive sex ed.
Yeah.
They would rather the school teach it, that a professional teach it, then they teach it, right?
Yeah.
But the school boards are sometimes controlled by conservative people that don't reflect the general population. And just a reminder to all elected officials, your job to represent what the people not want, not what you
Mhm.
want.
Preach, sister, preach. No, it's so true, and I mean, it's so interesting to me how it oftentimes, as powerful as a nation as the US has been up and I say up until this point because, we'll see where our future goes, but as powerful a nation as we are and as innovative as we are and that we are exemplar for so many things, sadly in women's health, especially maternal health, like our outcomes are worse, and so it has come up time and time again on this podcast, examples from other countries. So oftentimes in early podcasts, we've talked about like postpartum care abroad and like what's done in Finland and Germany and a lot of Scandinavian countries are always doing it better. And so it's even like that approach to sexual health and how you think about sex health education and making sure that teens feel safe and empowered in their bodies and to do things with with guidance rather than trying to hide from their parents and doing things that they might later on regret, like, again, high school flashbacks. We're okay, I'm not gonna live them now. Not gonna live them now just in case my mom listens and she's, like, not ready to hear that even though I'm a grown adult that's married.
Mhm.
Anywho, yeah, I appreciate your insight, and I appreciate your passion that, as you said, the representatives, the government representatives are representing the citizens and their needs and what we is best for them. And as we all are experiencing right now, politics are messy. It really
Mhm.
is freaking messy. But in the end, civil service means that you are standing up for the citizens and what they really need. So transitioning to another hot topic and passion of yours is hashtag periods optional. So for those who were not amongst the almost hundreds of thousands of viewers of your amazing TED Talk, tell us more about kind of what inspired hashtag periods optional and what do you wish that every woman understood about the safety and the power of skipping their periods?
Thank you so much for bringing that to the attention of your listeners and viewers because that is, I feel, my gift to the world. That anyone that's born with a uterus and is subject to bleeding 1 week out of 4 for a bunch of years in your life, you should know that hashtag periods optional, meaning you
Hmm.
don't have to bleed every month. I realized in trying to get pregnant with my first child, because I'd
Hmm.
been on the pill, and so your periods are a lot lighter on the pill.
Yeah.
And I came off to have a child, and every time I didn't get pregnant, I bled. And then I was like,
Yep.
the only reason we build up that lining every month of our uterus is to be like, embryo, no embryo, bleed. And then we
Yep.
build it up again. Embryo, no embryo, bleed. And we repeat that over and over and over every single
Hmm.
month from 12 and a half to 52. And then maybe we pop out 2 kids in the middle there, but all this other time, why are we doing this every month? And the
Yeah.
key there is every time you build that lining, and you know as an OB-GYN, you risk endometrial cancer.
Hmm.
Every time you pop the egg, and we don't know if it's the popping or the healing, we feel it has to do with the tubes, you risk ovarian cancer. And the only way to decrease your risk of ovarian cancer outside of taking out your ovaries is to go on the birth control pill, patch, or ring for 5 years. And that will decrease your risk of ovarian cancer by 50%. And the longer you're on those methods, blocking the egg from popping out every single month, the lower your risk of ovarian cancer. And I
Hmm.
go over in my TEDx talk. If you go to pandiahealth.com/periods optional or Google Dr. Sophia Yen TEDx talk periods optional, I go over Dr. Beverly Strassman's research. She is a medical anthropologist. She studies the Mali tribe in Dogon, Africa, the Dogon tribe in Mali, Africa.
Hmm.
And there they pass away the same time we do, 70,
Hmm.
80, just like us. So we're comparing apples to apples, not apples to
Yeah.
oranges.
Yeah.
They have 100 periods in their lives. We have 350 to 400. We have enough periods for 2 or 3 other people. They
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
no ovarian, no endometrial cancer. We
Huh.
have all this extra over and over. And then lastly, I like
Yeah.
to bring up that the colon is around the uterus. And as the uterus
Hmm.
is going up and down, I kind of
Hmm.
visualize that the colon is like, I'm sad for you. And
Yes.
either runs faster,
Uh,
diarrhea, runs
yep.
slower, constipation, to bring up that 30% of us, when we have our periods, have other symptoms as well. But when you
Yeah.
mess up the colon, you increase your risk of colon cancer. And so by
Mm.
decreasing this up and down, popping and every single month, 350 to 400, and taking it down to 100, you decrease your risk of ovarian, endometrial, colorectal cancer. And then, as
Yeah.
you know, in med school, we love asking the medical students, what is the number one cause of anemia in a menstruating woman? And the
Hmm.
answer is in the question,
Yeah.
menstruation. And so, for those of you who are listening and watching that don't have a uterus, never have bled, never are at risk of bleeding, imagine taking a knife and going and bleeding yourself 1 week
Yeah.
out of 4. And
Yeah.
knowing that this is random. And the other example I give, tiger Asian mom, Silicon Valley, but also pre med, biochemistry final, pre med,
Hmm.
MIT, all of a
Hmm.
sudden, and you're like, do I run to the bathroom and fit
Yeah.
and take care of that, or do I finish the exam? And all the
Yeah.
pre-meds, all the pre-health, you know the answer. You finish that
You veggie
exam.
Sam. You just deal with it.
You just suck it up. That is the
Yeah.
life of a pre-med. Do whatever it takes, suck it up. And
Yeah.
so I look to my left, I look to my right. This is MIT, 2 people without uteruses.
Not a care in the world.
Exactly. And I want that for my daughters. I have 2 daughters,
Mm.
and every exam they go into, I want them to crush it. And if
Hmm.
my daughters are hashtag period optional, your daughter has a 1 in 4 chance of being bleeding that day and a 1 in 28 chance of being hit by blood that day, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're so expressive, so it helps, like, really paint the picture, right? Because I think as a person who has a uterus, I know what it means to, like, literally bleed out once a month, and I
Mm.
think that for those who don't have a uterus, sometimes it's hard to maybe potentially, like, empathize, right? And I still remember before I am personally a user of the progestin IUD, but I still remember, like, before I got my IUD, like, wanting to go for a run with, like, the partner I was with at the time, and he's like, "Yeah, let's go. I feel great." And I was just like, "Oh god," like the flow was so heavy and like I am actually you don't know this about me, Sophia, but I am like I'm very, very competitive and I'm actually faster than him. And so I
Mm.
remember on that run, he was, like, killing me. He's like, "Anna, keep up." I was like, "I am hemorrhaging right now. Leave me alone." It's a real jokes aside, it's a real thing that impacts your focus at school and
Mhm.
impacts your focus at work. Again, I'm feel very fortunate. I think I'm on my 11th year of my progestin IUD, and, like, my float, it does not bother me anymore. It's not I don't have
Amazing.
to worry about it when I'm in the OR. I don't have to worry about it when I'm doing a 24-hour shift. Like, I can just focus on the thing at hand. I don't have to worry about it when I'm on vacation, right? I think there is something really empowering. And that's from my own personal experience, but also my personal knowledge as a clinician and kind of what you and I, kind of a theme of our conversation has been patient empowerment and patient
Mm.
education. And there really is like a stigma against skipping periods, right? There are definitely those patients who like, like my honeymoon's coming up, like how can I skip? And it's a fun
So
conversation. But
easy.
yeah, so easy. But I've also had patients who say like, "Oh no, no, no," like their identity, their womanhood is identified with bleeding once a month. Like and then I think the
Yeah.
most important part of any contraceptive counseling, I'm sure that you do, it's choosing the option that's best for the patient. We don't
Mhm,
project, you don't assume. And
mhm,
so for some patients who tell me like they want to feel like they menstruate once a month, and that's when the birth control pill and having that placebo week will make them feel normal. I think that's great.
mhm,
I think for the other patients who otherwise have personal reasons, whether it's gender dysphoria or menorrhagia, so really heavy periods, or again, personal reasons because of an awesome vacation coming up in like a tropical island, whatever it might be, I think it can be really empowering. But what do you say about the stigma? How do you counter the stigma against hashtag periods optional?
I think a lot of people bring up, quote, "natural." And so then I
Mm,
bring up the Dogon tribe in Mali. They
mhm,
are unperturbed by our drugs and science, and
mm,
they have 100 periods. We're having 350 to 400. What we are doing is unnatural. What we are
mm.
doing is putting us at risk of cancer, is putting us at risk of anemia, is putting us at competitive, uneven ground. As a feminist, I like to say I can do anything a person without a uterus can do, bleeding. But as a doctor who has access to drugs and science, I say, why? you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and so like when people have ovarian cancer, I'm like, did you go on the birth control pill patch ring? It's a little late now, but just curiosity. And they've
yeah.
actually taken a proactive approach that if you have a
Mm,
family history of ovarian cancer, you should go on the birth
mhm,
control pill, patch, or ring to block that egg popping for at
mhm.
least 5 years and maybe 7 or 10 just to like maximize your decreased risk
Yeah.
of ovarian cancer.
And I think that's a point I wanna emphasize because there's so many times there's a lot of, as you know, you one of the many things that inspire this podcast is to counter the misinformation. There's a lot out there, and there's a lot of times that patients come, again, to know for their own because they're just getting the information that they can, the way that they are able to access it, saying, "Oh, no, like, I thought birth control was gonna increase my risk of cancer," right? And so I really want us to, like everyone pause, hear Dr. Sophia Yen again say I'm gonna have you repeat.
Yes. Going on the birth control pill, patch, or ring decreases your risk of ovarian, endometrial, colorectal cancer, anemia, iron deficiency. It does slightly increase your risk of breast cancer, but per a New England Journal Medicine article, the slight increased risk in breast cancer is offset by the decrease in ovarian, endometrial, colorectal cancer, that you are much more likely to die of colorectal and ovarian cancer than you are to die of breast cancer because now we're good at detecting it and
Yep,
now we're good at treating it. It is not fun, but you live a lot longer than ovarian cancer. Unfortunately, we're still at the state where we catch it late, and some people die within weeks or months. So
yeah.
you do not, we can prevent this, and the benefits outweigh the risk.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you for saying it so clear so that, again, whoever has the honor of tuning in can hear it. And honestly, one of the things I love about the podcast is I learn myself, right? Like I love listening to my guests and being able to take what they share with the audience, and I get to share back to my patients. And now I'm just gonna hashtag quote Sophia Yen. I'm like, well, funny that you ask, and I'm just gonna say exactly what you said and say it hopefully almost as eloquently, right? I think there's nothing more empowering than education. I think that that's the primary goal of this podcast is to make sure that listeners walk away feeling strong, feeling knowledgeable about their bodies, feeling like they have resources to go to so they can understand their bodies better and understand what questions they can ask their clinicians and their care team to get the care that they deserve. So Sophia, I think you and I are doing a great job. I think we're doing a great job so far.
Yay!
So I'd like to take a moment to tell you this is my passion project based on years of experience as an OB/GYN doctor. I aim to empower moms and moms-to-be and those in the pregnancy and postpartum care space. If you appreciate what I do, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share with your friends so it can reach more people like you. You can visit goldenhour.fm for more information, resources, and all other episodes. If you have any requests, suggestions, or questions for future episodes, please email me at hello@goldenhour.fm or leave us a comment at goldenhour.fm on Instagram.
On
Go
that
us.
point, I did want to bring up that, as a woman of color, as an academic physician, I was the original prescriber of all the birth control on Pandia Health. So I
Yeah.
wrote 3,000 birth control prescriptions in 2 years, more than most people. And we did a 10-week follow up on everybody that was new. And we're like, any side effects, any breakthrough bleeding. And I realized that there are 40 different pills out there, 8
Yep.
different progesterones. And I
Yep.
don't know why no one had did this before. We have the different progesterones, we have their different androgenic progestational side effect, but no one had taken it by the milligrams of the progesterone in there and multiplied it out and then ranked them. So I
Yeah.
ranked all the 40 different pills based on their dosage of the androgen that was in there, the progestational effect, etc., from most likely to give you zits, least likely to give you zits,
Yeah.
most likely to break through bleed, least likely to break through bleed, and correspondingly most likely to give you acne, most likely to give you munchies, most likely to give you some psych kind of symptoms. And I
Yeah.
noticed that Blacks, Asians, Latinas had more breakthrough bleeding than other groups. And then
Huh.
looking into the research, our liver function tests are different and we
Yeah.
chew through the drug faster. So I
Oh,
then fixed
interesting.
it because most of it that graduated the academic centers, UCSF, Stanford, Harvard, were taught this is the birth control pill we prescribe here. And if it doesn't work, then good luck with that. Try a second one. Ha ha ha
Yeah.
ha.
Yeah.
And that pill is great if you're a Caucasian female that wants to bleed every month. But if you're not 100% Caucasian, Asian, Black, Latina, or you don't want to bleed every month, hashtag periods optional, then that pill does not work so
Maybe
well.
it's not the one.
Yeah. And so we have an algorithm we came up with, we call it a Dr. Yen's algorithm, based on race as a proxy for genetics. But in the future, we're
Huh.
collecting people's genetics and we'll go for genetics. That'll be better. And then age, because I'm adolescent medicine, and we recommend 30 micrograms of estrogen till 30.
Okay.
Otherwise, the phenomenon we're seeing right now is a lot of people come in and they're anti-hormone and they're like, give me the lowest dose estrogen
I
possible.
know.
And their doctor's like, okay, I'll write you the 10 microgram pill. I'll write you the
Yeah.
20 microgram pill. And they don't realize when that person hits 50 years old, they're not building up the bone because they didn't have enough estrogen to
Mhm.
build that. And when they fall down the stairs, they're going to break their hip. They're going to break
Yeah.
their wrist. And that's from birth control at age 20 to 30, 20 to 40. But now you're 50 and you're breaking your bone. So they're not going to make
Mhm.
that connection. So, anyway,
Yeah.
my algorithm, we check in at 10 weeks. 93% of patients are like, I like this. Let's go. We don't have to change it because we found the right one according to these 8 different variables that we've come up with. Do you have acne? Do you have PCOS? What is your experience with previous drugs? Can you drink 8 glasses of water a day? These kinds of things. And then
Yeah.
we do a 1 year follow up, which is the gold standard. How many people new to the birth control pill patch ring are still on it at a year? We have 82% with our delivery and our amazing customer service, more importantly, our algorithm. compared to national standard research, 33%. It's only 33% of pill people that started it are on it at a year. And then with
Yeah.
delivery goes up to 55, but we've taken it 82.
Yeah. That's impressive. I was just on a talk, earlier today where we were talking about, patient satisfaction on contraceptive methods, and whether or not they were either not on the method at all or on a method that they didn't like and they wanted to change.
Yeah.
And we again, you and I as prescribers are very aware of the patient complaints that, well, maybe I get more than you do because I don't have the yen algorithm, dang, but like breakthrough bleeding, acne, mood changes, changes in their sexual function, bloating, etc., right? The list goes on. And I think for someone who is a like fearless women's health advocate, part of the advocacy is making sure patients can birth if and when they want
Mm.
to. And contraception is huge. Like I want people to find their dream method. But
Mhm.
you're right. Like when a patient comes and sees me, it's because I'm not on that yen algorithm. I'm gonna get there. But when a
Yes.
patient comes to see me and we have again, like I really, we, most of us in our field hopefully take this seriously in terms of, the breadth of contraceptive counseling. But say I have a patient who narrows down that they think that the birth control pill is the best option for them. I explain to them, I'm like, okay, well, listen, like there's the same exact type of estrogen in it, ethinyl
Mhm.
estradiol, but there's different dosing and there's a bunch of progestins. There's a bunch. I don't know what's going to, because again, no algorithm. I don't know what's going to work best for you, but this is the one that tends like to work better for my patients and that they don't come back and complain later. Let's try this. And if it doesn't work for you, telling me specifically what the symptom is, breakthrough bleeding, acne, whatever it is, I might be able to adjust, the
Yeah.
estrogen dose or the progestin, right? So I'm doing my poor man poor man's yen algorithm method, but it's so I say that to speak to like why this algorithm is so needed because I went into medicine to make people feel better.
Yeah.
So I'd love to just like one stop shop. I'd love for that person to come in, I give them the drug that I know will work for them, the best for them, and they leave like happy camper, like that what I think he said 80 some percent
Yes.
satisfaction. I would love that. That is the dream. But I'm always very humble and I say, "Hey, we're going to start with this and it might take us a couple tries to find the thing that works for you." And I think patients appreciate that honesty, and I think that's why ideally those patients still end up overall satisfied because they know that okay, Dr. Nseo is just like helping me listen to my body and we're going to figure out the thing for me. But I think it's amazing if you're able to like ideally like hit that bullseye. Yeah, bullseye, hit that bullseye right away. And so speaking of which, so how can someone find this amazing yen algorithm and tell us more about Pandia Health? We've like
Yeah.
touched on it. It's like inception and we've touched on like what it's done and how it's grown, but I definitely want to make sure we give Pandia Health the shout out it deserves.
Yeah, thank you. So we chose Pandia, the Greek goddess of healing, light, full moon, because we're all about women's empowerment. And
Uh,
then I came up with the definition because everybody's like Panda Health, and I'm like, no, not Panda Health, because your spell checker will change it to Panda Health.
yeah.
Pandia. Pan is every, and dia is day. We want to be with you every day from your first
Mm,
period until your last breath.
I like
Because
that.
those of us that are doing HR Menopause Society certified practitioners are like, you're going to find this patch on my dead body. So we're going to be with you until that moment if you choose. To find us, pandiahealth.com, and we have a birth control arm and a perimenopause menopause arm. The birth control arm, $35 once a year to use our expert physicians with unlimited follow up with a physician, but only about the birth control pill, patch, ring, not about anything else. Only for birth control, not for PCOS, endometriosis, fibroids, whatever. Just for birth control because you only paid 35 bucks. And
Yeah.
then on the peri/menopause side, it's $35 a month, 1 year minimum subscription. We're seeing women pay $1,000 to $4,000 to see a naturopathic doctor who then tries to sell you supplements that aren't FDA approved or
Thank you.
tested.
Exactly. Watch out
Whereas
for that.
we only do FDA approved and tested medications, and we are
Right.
limited to the FDA approved reasons for HRT, which are hot flashes, night sweats, genitourinary symptoms of menopause, which is, I call it dry sandpaper vagina, painful sex
Ouch.
Yeah, or recurrent urinary tract infections
Mhm.
without the infections or with the infections. And then lastly, my joke is as women of color, we never get a leg up. But a lot of us are lactose intolerant, so we suck at taking milk. And so we are all immediately at risk for osteoporosis. So
Mhm.
if you have a family history of osteoporosis, your mom, your auntie, your grandma, all that, you're at risk for osteoporosis. If you are small framed, if you don't drink enough milk or get enough calcium, you are at risk for osteoporosis. That will buy it for you. Although
Mm.
there are many benefits of HRT for brain and blood and bone, the bone is covered under, but the other two are not,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But if you
Yeah.
have one of those four, then we can do it. If you want to go outside that four, you have to find an in person doctor who's comfortable prescribing off label.
Off-label uses. Oh, that's a great transition, right? And I think as I alluded to at the beginning of our chat, yeah, Pandia Health, it's perfect even knowing the origin of that name in that it covers so much. It is part of every day of your life. I'm imagining like me like in my in my coffin, like still with a patch attached. Like
Yeah.
won't even like won't even let you take it off. Anyway, and so as we've spent a lot of time kind of talking about uh early education for adolescents around sexual health, wonderful transition talking about contraceptive care and like the empowerment that is hashtag periods optional. Let's, now that we're at the latter end of a reproductive health cycle, let's talk about perimenopause. So I know that you had a TikTok that went like viral around perimenopause. It's a hot topic, right? Like, for
Yeah.
me as a OBGYN who's been practicing for almost 10 years now, I've seen how the conversation has changed over the years, and we're now it's on top of mind for everyone who is either not even at perimenopausal age yet, like just wondering like when's it going to happen? I heard about it. Sounds crazy. Or those who are in the thick of it. And I think it is so important. And I might tell patients like these are my favorite visits because there's so much education that I can provide and so much support that we can hopefully provide medically. But from your experience, what you and your team are doing at Pandia Health and the conversations that you've been a part of as a leader in this space, what do you think that women are missing the most in this like perimenopausal transition? What is it? What is the information that like you want to make sure they walk away understanding today?
I think that a lot of women are now aware of menopause, but they're not aware of perimenopause.
Mm,
But I also want to say beware of for profit companies who are trying to freak you out before
thank
you need to be
you.
freaked out.
Yeah.
Okay. So the
Yeah.
average age of menopause is 52
Mhm.
plus or minus 5 years. Okay. And then perimenopause is 5 to 7 years, 10 maybe, but not usually, 5 to 7 years before that last period. Know that for us as physicians, technically menopause is your last menstrual period, but we
Mhm.
can't figure that out till a year after. And that is limbo. And it sucks because as a person who went through that, you get your period and you're like, is that the last one? Is that the last one? And then 3 to 6 months later, and you're like, oh, I got to restart the clock again. Then you go
Yeah.
another 3 months and you're like, ha ha ha. You get to 6 months and you're like, oh, I got to start the clock
Yep.
again. And that
Yep.
is just why I'm a total control freak. And then there's those of us who have made hashtag periods optional. So we're
Mhm.
going into menopause on estrogen and progesterone. The rest of you all are doing this. So this is
Yep.
important to know that this is perimenopause. Do
Yep.
you want to draw a blood test during perimenopause? No, because
It's all over the place.
all over the place. This doesn't tell me anything in perimenopause. Only if, your follicle stimulating hormone is crazy high, then yes, that will tell me something. And your estradiol's crazy low. But if all of this, people are like, oh, I'm estrogen dominant. Well, if you're estrogen dominant, then you're not in menopause. You may be
Mhm.
perimenopause or you may just be normal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
unfortunately, right now, the state of the science is we treat to your symptoms and
Yes.
not to a blood level. I personally believe, as a scientist, there will be a blood level where we're like, if
Yeah.
you're at 100 micrograms of of estrogen, that's best for your bone. That's best
Mhm.
for your brain. There just has to be a level, right? That
Yeah.
that makes sense at. But we don't have those guidelines yet, and
Mhm.
so we just treat to the symptoms and not to the blood level. Doctors may draw blood because thyroid stuff happens during this
Yeah.
time, and that's quite common, and we don't want to miss hypothyroidism or autoimmune thyroid or cancer or other things. That's much, much rarer. But in general, during perimenopause, before that last period and a year after that, there's no point to drawing blood and getting a level, okay? Don't be all running to your doctor asking for all these, because I'm seeing on the
Yeah.
doctor Facebook groups, like, these people are all asking for hormones. And
I
like, what is the
know.
point? Doctors don't like ordering tests unless it's going to change management or
Yes.
unless it's going to do something different, you know?
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two, in this chaos, the best treatment is actually to take it over and flatten out your hormones. And the way you do
Yep.
that is with the birth control pill or vaginal ring, where you have a continuous
Mhm.
hormone instead of this. And it is the
Mhm.
this that's causing the hot flashes and the night sweats. And it is the this that will cause extra uncontrolled bleeding because it's not
Mhm.
opposed by the progesterone. And it is
Mhm.
the this that'll cause headaches and breast tenderness. And it is the this that's going to cause dry vagina, urinary tract infections, bad sleep. But if you're here, then you should be okay. But so that's another fine point, is that in perimenopause, ideally don't be demanding bioidentical estrogen and progesterone, because I may be adding estrogen to this, and that will be headache, bleeding, breast tenderness, badness, not going to help with this situation rather than taking it over. But to each their own. So if you are okay with the roller coaster and bleeding and headaches and all that stuff, you do you. But for
Yeah.
the rest of us, and generally, we want you to be nice and smooth.
Yeah.
And so the TikTok that went viral is that those of us that have gone hashtag periods optional, that have gone on the IUD, it's hard to know when we're in menopause. My
Yep.
last period was 16 years ago. My last child, because I went periods optional, and I'm like, I'm never going to bleed because I'm not going to catch an embryo. I don't want an
Yeah.
embryo.
Yeah,
So,
I'm good. I'm
yeah.
good.
Yeah. So, how did I know I was in menopause? So, from 1 year, my waist was fine, my cholesterol was fine, my checkup was good. Next year, my waist disappeared. If you know
Huh.
me, 99% of my outfits is skirts. And I've been in skirts for 20, 30 years. And I was like, no, am I going to have to toss all my skirts? I'm also an obesity expert. And I was like, oh, no. Am I going to have to throw down some metformin or GLP-1 or something?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
go to see my doctor. I'm a doctor, so I'm a total doctor snob. I'm like, where'd you go to residency? Where'd you go to medical school? Are you the best and the brightest there is?
Yeah.
And I go to her, and she's like, it's old age. Go see our nutritionist. Go do some more exercise. And in my head, I'm like, I'm an obesity expert. People wait
Yeah.
6 months to see me. I know
Yeah.
diet. I know exercise. Nothing has changed from last year to this year. And this was before I went into menopause. And so I was like, okay. And then I went into menopause, and I did the menopause, going into menopause, meaning actually providing care,
Yeah.
deciding to go into the field, getting to be probably the only pediatrician that is Menopause Society certified practitioner. So you have to read all the papers, be up to date on the latest and greatest science, evidence based stuff, and then you got to pass a test. At age 50 plus, I don't like taking these tests. They should just scan my brain and be like, yeah, she knows her
She's got
stuff.
it. She's
Yeah,
got it. She's good.
exactly. But God, the anxiety of having to take this test and whatnot. But then I realized that old age is euphemism for menopause. And so what
Mhm.
happens is at age 52, plus or minus 5 years, your body takes away the estrogen, is like, thank you for your service, go out to pasture. And all this crazy goes down. So the first thing is blood, which means heart stuff. Your arteries no longer dilate. They stiffen, the nitric oxide, if you want to get all technical about it. And
Yeah.
then your arteries fill up with triglycerides, and that's like insulin insensitivity leading towards diabetes, and then also fills up with LDL. And then
Mhm.
central obesity. So the obesity goes to your waist, the
Mhm.
muffin top, or your pants don't fit, or your skirt don't fit. And then, as an obesity expert, visceral adiposity, which means
Mhm.
fat on your heart and in your heart, fat on and in your liver, what I call foie gras of the human being. It's a medical associated steato liver disease is what we call it in the obesity field. But as a obesity expert, I'm like, if cholesterol and all that's filling up your heart and your liver, that's really bad. And so
Yeah,
if
no
that's what
bueno.
happens when you take away estrogen, put it back, you
Yeah.
know? And then within 5 years of hitting menopause, our calcium and our bone density goes and our
Mhm.
risk of fracture goes up. We could prevent 60% of fractures if everybody went on HRT. We could decrease hip fractures by 30% if everybody that needed it went on HRT. And when you have a hip fracture, for those of us in medicine, we know within 1 to 3 years, there's a very high likelihood that you'll be dead
Yep.
because it
It's
just
a
messes your
steep
life.
downhill after a hip fracture. It sadly is.
Exactly.
No, and I appreciate there's so many. I mean, I love this conversation, and one of the things I love about it is it's so validating to hear how you educate people and women on these hormonal changes, right? And when I'm sitting with my patients, I'm doing the we're the same people. We talk with our arms and our hands. I do the whole same thing. Like it's a roller coaster ride through perimenopause. So we want to keep you in a steady state, right? And it's really important to help patients understand what's happening in their bodies, especially when it's so interesting because so much of the podcast up until this point was really focused on maternal health and matrescence and how that this like really intense physical, mental, emotional change that women go through when they are pregnant and postpartum. You lived it twice, girl. You know it, right? But really, the next biggest transition that we go through besides adolescence and matrescence is perimenopause/menopause. And I
Mm,
think again, when you feel othered in your own body, when you don't feel like yourself, when you feel like an alien in your body, it is so disheartening. It's so destabilizing. And so by the time patients come and see you and me, they're at their wits' end. They're scared, they're angry, they're frustrated.
yes.
And so I think anything that we can do to meet them where they are and also give them good information because I think probably what you've noticed, and I'm glad that your TikTok went viral because you are a vetted, well educated, very passionate person, is that there are so many people out there who are companies who are taking advantage of the fact that menopause and perimenopausal care is a hot topic. And because
Mhm.
sadly, women, especially women of color, but women in general have been ignored and not listened to. Even your example of like your clinician saying, "Oh, well, you're aging. Like, go see a nutritionist." Like, probably an incredible physician, and they probably did not realize and didn't mean to be dismissive. And I've totally reframed the way that I approach patients' symptoms because everything is perimenopause and menopause, and it sucks. It effing
Yeah.
sucks. And so I think there are a lot of companies and individuals who are taking advantage of how hot this is, which means patients are coming in, unfortunately, with miseducation or misinformation about what is FDA approved use of hormonal therapy and what is not. What can it really help? What does the evidence show that it can help with and what it's not? And so I think I want
Mhm.
to just clarify, you already said it on patients to hear from you again, really what the FDA approved uses of hormonal therapy are, what has it been proven to help with, what it can potentially be beneficial from, but the evidence doesn't necessarily support it. Can you say that one more time so people
Yes.
really walk away from this conversation empowered and clear? Because no, I spend so much time, I feel like in a consult visit that's only 20 minutes, I spend the first 10 minutes like combating the misinformation. So I really think what you're saying is pure gold, pure gold.
Yes, yes. So partially for my own company, I don't like people coming to my company, signing up, and then getting really angry that I can't give them HRT because they didn't fit the criteria. Because we're telemedicine, we don't want to get sued, we don't want to lose our
Yeah.
license. If I lose my license, then the whole company goes down. And we are currently in 16 states, serving
Awesome.
lots, thousands of people. So I don't want to take that away by going off label. So I cannot go
Yeah.
off label, but maybe your doctor in person can. So the FDA approved reasons for HRT: hot flashes, night sweats, genitourinary symptoms, genito we covered, painful, sandpaper, dry sex. Urinary is actually huge. If you talk to gynecologists, gyneurologists, so they're both urology and gynecology trained. Normally, urology is just but
Yeah.
gyneurology is specific to those of us with uteri and ovaries and our urinary tract infections. They recommend anybody 52 and above just to throw down some vaginal
100%.
estrogen
Oh,
to
I love
prevent
vaginal estrogen.
recurrent urinary tract infections, but also helps with the dry stuff and all that. Systemic estrogen will help with that 50% of the time, but 50% is not enough, and you need that vaginal estrogen. Moving on beyond that is at risk for osteoporosis. This is where a lot of us could get the buy-in for HRT to prevent those fractures that we talked about. So that is the FDA approved. You notice I didn't say anything about heart attacks, even though the number one killer in women with breast cancer and without, and in all women, is cardiovascular disease.
Mhm.
And 30% of cardiovascular incidents, heart attack, MI, stroke, could be prevented if we all went on HRT. But that is currently not an indication. I don't know what it's going to take to get ACOG or the Menopause Society to just say it, because that was the whole reason that we did all this research. So,
Yeah.
so that's one benefit, but not FDA approved. Brain fog. They've shown that there's actually a decreased risk of dementia by 33%, but this is not a randomized clinical trial. This is association, and association, we know, does not necessarily mean causation. And the example there is that they noticed before they knew that smoking was causing lung cancer, that everybody had a lighter. And so they're like, lighters cause cancer, but it's not the lighters. That's an association,
Yeah.
not the causation, if that helps
Yes.
people understand that concept. As I like to say, estrogen affects every cell from your
Mhm.
head down to your toes. And so some people notice a widening of their hair part. Other people will notice that their skin is getting dry, and that if you had eczema, now it's back. And then the other one, as you mentioned, this is another stage of life. Some people are calling it cougarty. So it's like puberty, but cougar wise, or reverse puberty. Instead of getting your hormones, they're being taken away. But
Yeah.
I've also noticed zits, as there's an imbalance of my
Mhm.
hormones. I have not had a zit for like 20, 30 years, as long as I was on the birth control pill. But now that I've switched and now that I'm here, my libido's back. But in exchange, I get some zits. Like, this is not okay.
Yeah.
So these are not indications for HRT. Brain fog is not an indication for HRT currently, but these are things that will possibly benefit. There are 70 different symptoms of menopause, but only these four categories are the FDA approved. The other thing I want people to know is FDA approved and tested. A lot of people are
Mm.
selling supplements. A lot of people are selling compounded. Compounded is not FDA approved nor FDA tested. And the pellets, despite being a company worth $1 billion, you think if it IPO'd on NASDAQ that it had been FDA tested, FDA approved. No, it has not been.
Yep.
And so when I heard about pellets as a scientist, I was like, I could see that in rabbits. I would put pellets under, but in a human, I would not
Yeah.
put pellets in there. And the problem with the pellets is it depends who's doing it, if they're giving you supraphysiologic levels. So it's like doping. Who doesn't like
Mm.
androgenic steroids? It gives you power, it gives you energy, it gives you libido. But it might also give you a deep throat. It might also give
Mhm.
you hair. It might also give you male alopecia, other
Mhm.
things. And once it's in your body, it's dissolving. They cannot take it out.
Yeah.
So that's a negative. And a lot of physicians are like, I have to wean these people off, like drug addicts, off of their
Yeah.
pellets. So the no academic national society recommends pellets, and
Yeah.
generally do not recommend compounded. But bioidentical is really kind of a marketing phrase. It's the exact same hormone that's in your body. And so synthetic, non-synthetic, they're all synthesized because it's coming
Mhm.
from a soy plant, unless they sucked it out of one human and put it in another. Okay. It's being synthesized, but there are bioidentical, FDA approved, FDA tested. It's your standard patch,
Yep.
gel, spray, And then the progesterone is the micronized oral progesterone. The
Mhm.
other ones that are not bioidentical are the progestins and the ethinyl estradiol. So two words versus just straight up estradiol. And then
Yeah.
technically there's estetrol, which is bioidentical to a fetal estrogen, but like why would an adult have fetal estrogen? But it's kind of cool that fetal estrogen, I actually think it may have a role in the treatment of perimenopause.
Yeah.
So
Brilliant.
yeah.
Brilliant. No, it's so much because I again, like I said, part of the inspiration for the podcast was realizing that by the time I was seeing patients, they were either in fear because of what they saw online or angered or confused or misinformed. And so I think having guests like you on this show is incredibly empowering for any patient listening or person listening, let alone for me as a clinician. I feel so validated and seen because everything that you're saying are things that I say, and I think that for a lot of us OBs, I could at least I could speak to my colleagues who I work so closely with. We oftentimes feel like we enter these rooms and having conversations, really important conversations with patients, but we have to counter the misinformation that they've unknowingly been exposed to. So I think people find Dr. Sophia Yen. She speaks the truth. You're amazing. And so as we wrap up, we got to talk about Pandia Health. We didn't even get to kind of touch on all the other amazing things that you do, sheheroes.org, Silver Ribbon Company. But that being said, with all the hats that you wear and all the experiences that you've had as a person, but as a clinician, as a CEO, as a founder, what would you hope for your daughters, for the next generation of women to take away from the work that you do? And what should we as fellow providers in women's health, what torch should we carry to help this future generation?
I think, one, it's sad that this generation has fewer rights than you and I did. And
Mm,
at the very least, we need to make sure they have equal, if not more rights than we do.
mhm.
I hope that our country moves towards national health care. As we all know, the insurance companies and the PBMs are these middle people making millions, denying care, wasting doctors' time. The bane of my existence in obesity clinic is every time I walk in, here's 3 to 5 prior authorizations that I have to yell back and forth with the insurance company. They approved it last month, but now this month they decided they're not going to. So, what is the patient going to do? And they don't pay any physician for our time for that.
Mm.
Specifically for future doctors, I hope that we will move to a method where we're paid by the minute. Lawyers, accountants, everybody else is
Billable
paid
hours.
by the minute. Right now, we're paid in these weird chunks that are negotiable and CPT codes and whatever. Like, I'm happy to spend hours with you if you
Yeah.
pay that, right?
Yep.
And people are going to these alternative physicians saying, I get the best alternative providers. I get the best amazing care. They spend so much time with me. And I was like, if you paid me $1,000 an hour, hell, I would spend 5 hours
Yeah.
with my girlfriend. But my system reimburses us $30 to $75 a visit. So you have to keep that in mind. And I'm really frustrated with my company when we are charging $35 once a year with Dr. Yen's algorithm and unlimited follow up. And people are like, I don't want to pay that. Okay. And then for our menopause, it's $35 a month, works out to 420 a year, but unlimited with 100% doctors who know our menopause as opposed to somebody else. 31% of OB/GYN residents today have some menopause curriculum.
Yep.
Flip side, 69% have none. And then who knows about internal medicine or family practice? And I just asked a medical student who's still in medical school right now, how much menopause education did you get? All they know is hot flashes and night sweats happen. That's
It
all they
happens.
know. They d Yeah,
No, you're so right. So much of what I've learned has been in practice. Like I went to one of the best like training programs in the nation. UCSF is phenomenal. I learned
yeah,
so many great things. But like the menopausal care I got, and actually one of the best menopausal experts who I know, Risa Kagan, like,
love her.
she wasn't part of our like core curriculum, but she definitely did her best to teach us like on the fly when she would attend some of our clinics, but it wasn't enough. Like I didn't get enough RISA, right? But I learned a lot of these past years. But I agree. I think there's so much more that can be done in terms of education for those of us who have the honor of caring for patients.
Yeah. So we are seeing some legislative move that way. I don't think it'd be too much to ask to have 1 hour of menopause education in medical school for all of it. Because as I said, estrogen, progesterone affects every cell from the head down to the toe, the eyes, the joints. We're hearing musculoskeletal syndrome of menopause, the bones, et cetera, the heart and obesity, all of that need to recognize, hey, might be menopause. Hey, might benefit from estrogen and progesterone, sleep, anxiety, depression, etc. And then for OB-GYN, family medicine, internal medicine, I don't think it's too much to ask for 3 hours of we do continuing medical education
Hmm.
every 5 to 10 years or whatever your
Yeah.
society decides, but just something to catch everybody up who hasn't, necessarily been caught up in that situation. I get it because as a pediatrician, they force us to take end of life education, and I really don't see that much end of life
Yeah.
but we all take it because somebody passed that law. So let's pass
Yeah.
something similar because 100% of those of us born with uteri will go through menopause and 70% will suffer something. 30% lucky you, okay? But the other 70% is going to suffer something. And even that 30% will have that bone loss, will have that increased risk of cardiac disease, increased risk of diabetes. So, something that we need to teach. And so I hope that our daughters in their future, one, equal, if not more rights than we grew up with, better healthcare, better education of healthcare about menopause, perimenopause, and hashtag periods optional and birth control. 40 different pills, not all pills are the same. And then maybe also just to throw in, because I'm throwing out my wish list, better control of social media for people to specify, oh, I'm an eye doctor and I'm talking about menopause, or I'm a
Mhm.
chiropractor, or I'm a naturopathic doctor, or that I'm pushing supplements that haven't been randomized clinical trial tested against estrogen or that hasn't been FDA approved, FDA tested. Not that it can be. Unfortunately, no supplements are FDA tested or approved. And maybe that's the law that we need to move towards or something. But know that for hot flashes, night sweats, estrogen beats everything. And if anyone's trying to sell you anything different, ask them, has it been randomized clinical trial against estrogen and did it beat estrogen? And the answer will be no.
Yeah. Yeah. Oof. You're giving me chills. No, such a strong note to end this conversation on. We've covered the full gambit, right? From sexual health and sexual empowerment all the way through perimenopause and menopause and perimenopausal menopausal empowerment. That's what it comes down to is education is power. Understanding your body is power. Advocating for yourself and knowing what to ask for yourself is power. And you and your team at Pandia Health are doing that. Hashtag periods are optional. Hashtag, we're trying to think of a hashtag for perimenopause and menopausal care from something you said, but there are,
Stop sucking it up is my
stop.
phrase.
Yeah.
Is that if
Hashtag stop
you
sucking it up.
Yeah, if you are having hot flashes, night sweats, genital urinary symptoms, at risk for osteoporosis, you will not get a gold medal for seeing how long you can white knuckle it until you finally give in to treatment. Like, don't suck it up. On average, it lasts 7 years. Would we
Yeah.
ask a dude, erectile dysfunction? Oh, well, let's see how that goes. 7 years for you. No, it's immediately on the corner, online, available in 24 hours. And that's pretty much what Pandia Health has done for peri/menopause care. We have it on demand 24/7. We'll get to you within 3 to 5 days. For birth control, within 24 hours. We didn't give our doctors the weekend off. We originally were going to, but we haven't. And someday, hopefully, we will give our doctors the weekends off. So give us grace if on the weekends it's a little slower.
No, and I appreciate it. I think, I work in a large healthcare system, but as you and I both know, it's fractured. And, as much as I care about my patients and I'm excited and deeply passionate about helping them with their contraceptive or perimenopause, menopausal needs, I think Pandia Health um, is able to fill a gap, right? Because I love that I have a good following of patients, which means there's like sometimes takes 3 months, sometimes 6 months to get in with me. Ideally, will be worth the wait, but I get it. If you been dealing with a symptom for however long, like waiting that 3 months it isn't worth it for that patient as hard as I might try to get them in on time. So I think as someone who is working within this fractured, imperfect healthcare system, anything outside of anything that can hopefully help, fill the gaps, patch the holes, mend the tears, if you will, is so beneficial. I think we all are trying to work synergistically to help patients.
Yeah, and we can just be a bridge until you can get in. Or if you have more complex, we save the complex patients for the brick and mortar where you can do what you do best and what can only be done in brick and mortar. And the simple, easy, everyday stuff, let us just take care of that because
Yeah.
you have better things to do. You need to use your amazing hands and brains for in-person stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I'm glad that you are out there fighting the good fight and advocating for patients as I am. I think, like you said, we're all in it together, and it's a beautiful thing. So, Sophia, Dr. Yen, I so appreciate you. What a wonderful chat. I could keep going forever, but sadly, can't wait for people to catch this episode and all the richness that you've provided.
Thank you. This has been so fun.
Thank you very much for listening to The Golden Hour, the podcast community where moms and moms-to-be can hear stories from other mothers and learn from top experts in pregnancy and postpartum care. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share with your friends so we can reach more people like you. You can visit goldenhour.fm for more information, resources, and all other episodes. If you have any requests, questions, or suggestions for future episodes, please email me at hello@goldenhour.fm or leave us a comment at goldenhour.fm on Instagram. Looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. Until then, stay golden.